Thank you guys for being here. So my name is Katie. I am the legal director at Neighbors Immigration Clinic. And then Mizari, who is our executive director, will be joining in a little bit as well. So I kind of just wanted to start with a little bit. Mizari will kind of explain different prongs. There's kind of two prongs of what we do at Neighbors Immigration Clinic. And so I'm going to kind of explain the stuff from the legal side, and she'll explain some of the more like mutual aid, ICE, hot response, those kinds of programs as well. So from a legal perspective, part of what we do is direct client services. And so we do not do lobbying or like class action litigation, things like that. What we do instead is we represent clients in humanitarian and family-based immigration cases. And so basically what that means is as long as it's not an employment visa or a student visa, we don't do those types of work because generally in order for you to apply for an employment visa or a student visa, you have to be sponsored by a school or an employer, and they're the ones who are paying all of the fees. And so we generally believe that those people can pay private attorney fees because it's usually big universities or big employers that are doing that. And so we represent at a time probably about 240, I think right now is somewhere around where my caseload is, in like a wide range of case types. So we do everything from affirmative applications, which is basically where someone has some reason that they're eligible for immigration status and they're filing things with the government like on their own accord. The government's not trying to deport them. They're just going forward and applying for different benefits. And then we will also represent individuals that are in deportation proceedings, so meaning the government is actively trying to deport them. And then also we just recently started representing people that are in detained facilities in Kentucky. We're not a huge hub for detention, but in this past year, we've gone from having one detention facility for immigration to 8. The vast majority of people that have been caught up in the raids that have happened in Minneapolis and in Chicago have all been sent to Kentucky and are now detained here. And so we've been working with those people, especially to try to help get these individuals out of detention. A lot of them have attorneys already in their underlying cases, but it just gets really messy because their underlying attorneys are in Minneapolis or in Chicago. And so they aren't able to do necessarily the part to get them out of detention in Kentucky. So that's kind of where we've been starting in that process. So that's kind of my realm, is representing clients in these array of services. And I think Mizari's on here now as well. So I'll let her kind of give a little bit of the other things that we do as an organization as well.
Thank you, Katie. Mizari, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize for being late. It's been one of those days. But as Katie mentioned, I don't know what all she shared, but she does fabulous work, and she is our attorney here at Neighbors Immigration Clinic, representing clients in some of the most complex cases around immigration. The other thing that we do at Neighbors is we also do a lot of educational advocacy around prepping families, prepping individuals in general of what to do in case of deportation. We've kind of been not to like bring on fear or anything, because we try not to lead from fear, but really letting the folks that we work with understanding that it's not if it happens, it's when it happens. Families need to be prepared, individuals need to be prepared. So a good part of our work also does consist of Know Your Rights, where we go out to communities and talk about what are the rights that you have. And a lot of the times in our office, you will hear us say, well, no one has rights at the moment. And that's not to underestimate the power of being educated and knowing exactly what to do in case you are encountered with an ICE officer or any type of immigration enforcement. But really, it's to prepare families. And the other part of the Know Your Rights session is, okay, we've had this entire conversation of what to do in case you encounter ICE, what to do in case you are in case you enter into detention, right? Like how to access legal counsel and all those processes. But then now let's talk about the aspect of what happens if mom or dad get detained and who do the kids get to stay with? What are those processes like? Where does a dog go for vet? Like all those things that a lot of the times we don't think about that are usually left to one person to think about. What we're seeing right now is a lot of the work, a lot of the folks that are being detained, a lot of them are the breadwinners in their families. And so that takes a huge piece from um, families and families having to figure out those things. So really what we're trying to do is we're trying to be proactive in that piece of like, okay, let's sit down, let's have honest conversations. We'll walk you through our family plan of like, okay, who do the kids get to stay with? And Katie really has done a wonderful job in a lot of the things that we're hearing in the community, or maybe you all have heard either on TikTok or wherever you're getting your information from, is power of attorneys. We don't recommend power of attorneys, and Katie can chat a little bit more on the aspect of why we don't recommend power of attorneys. But also, that is a piece that we talk about with families as well. For our non-immigrant communities, we do a lot of educational workshops around understanding immigration, what is happening in the current landscape, and also just understanding like what our clients are having to go through. That educational piece, it's very important for folks to be educated, especially as things are changing every day, which is a huge part of why a lot of our sessions are not recorded, because we can say one thing today, but tomorrow it could be completely different. And so we do that. We do immigration 101s throughout the community, in church communities and faith communities, all kinds of communities, to be able to educate our non-immigrant communities on what is it that our communities are going through, but also localizing it, because we know that what's happening in Minnesota, what's happening in Chicago, what's happening in Omaha and California is very different from what's happening in Kentucky. And we always want to localize what is happening on a national scale, because what you're hearing in Minnesota is not necessarily happening here. Yes, there is immigration enforcement, but it does not look like anything related to what happened in Chicago over the summer or what's currently happening in Minnesota. Um, Additionally, there's a lot of that we do with a small team of two. We run a hotline that is available Monday through Sunday that individuals can call and report any ICE activity. And that hotline is available from 5 a.m. until 9:30, Monday through Sunday. Individuals can call in the language that their heart desires. It can be Spanish, it can be French, it can be Haitian Creole, Arabic, and we will have hotline volunteers that are able to, one, call in a language line person to be able to effectively report ICE activity. And the reason why we established this is because there's so many individuals right now who just don't have an idea what ICE is or what ICE looks like. And I can tell you that we've been doing this work for a very long time, and the way that ICE operated in Obama years is very different. The way ICE has been operating now, and the way they're even showing up is very, very different. And so one of the reasons we did this was to be able to bring peace of mind to individuals, because we know that when someone shares unconfirmed ICE activity, the first group that gets impacted by these are your families. Your families stop sending their kids to school. They stop asking for the services that they need, and we see that because we will have friends that are connected to us call us and be like, is this true? I'm a teacher at X, Y, and Z school and my families aren't showing up. And so we see that, and that's really a fear in a lot of our communities. And what we're trying to do is make sure that communities are informed. So our hotline operates Monday through Sunday, and anyone can report ICE activity. And we have a team of dedicated volunteers that will go out and verify the ICE activity to ensure that it's accurately ICE and it's not Lexington Police undercover officers or any other law enforcement agency. So, yeah.
Thank you. And thank you all for the work you do. Do we have any questions?
What is the number, please?
Joanne, I'm not sure what's going on, but it's unclear.
Hi.
Hi.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have a question. So, do you all have any opportunities to provide information or awareness if um, if they are unemployed, if the immigrant families are unemployed? Do you have like a flyer uh, where they can be trained, or they can? Is there any opportunity list or resource list that you have to provide for families that are dealing with transitions?
We only do legal services. That's the only thing we do. We don't do any other
Mhm.
social services. Um, we're really good at what we do in the legal realm, and that's really what we focus on. And so, for any other services, especially if you're working with undocumented families, one of the biggest things that we've been pushing for is for organizations to really think about how they're serving undocumented families. And I know this is a very broader conversation that's not going to change overnight. But a lot of the work that we do is strictly legal services.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I saw Ms. Ari can throw in the hotline number maybe in the chat because I don't know it off the top of my head. I have to look it up. But I can take the question about what is something that y'all can do to be engaged right now and proactive in taking care of our families. I think one thing that you guys probably see a lot is mixed status family. So that's where we have parents, kids, it might be even siblings where people have different statuses. So someone might be a US citizen, someone might have a green card, someone might be undocumented, all of those kinds of things. One thing is to encourage families to get a legal consultation if they have not had one recently. A lot of people might have had a legal consultation years past, but immigration changes so rapidly that we really encourage families to get one as a family, because if you do it as a family and you're explaining to the lawyer that you're mixed status, we can talk through in an individual level those family planning things, as well as on a bigger level what options people might have. A big thing right now too is there are in the past, immigration had priorities of who would be detained. And so it was like if ICE went out, they were really only detaining you if you had a criminal record. That priority system is gone. And now their goal is to detain anyone that is undocumented no matter what. And so we are trying to walk through in consults with people what happens when you're detained by ICE as well. And I mean, I know Ms. Ari does these in the Know Your Rights presentations as well, but just so that people are prepared. I've had multiple people sign voluntary deportation orders as soon as they had contact with ICE, not knowing that's what they were signing. And once that paper is signed, there's a whole lot less we can do than if they knew going in. But unfortunately, it's kind of like the criminal justice system where, like, police officers, if you're arrested for something, they're allowed to lie to you as part of the interrogation process, and that's legal. The same thing is true with immigration officers. And so if people don't know their rights until after they're detained, they often lose out on a lot of things. So our office charges $50 for consultation. So we recommend, whether you come see us, whether you go see another attorney, that's a big thing, is just recommending that families get a consultation if they haven't. I would say in the past, like 3 years, it's probably worth getting just because the laws are so different. The other thing is, I know Ms. Ari was talking a little bit about the family planning and the power of attorneys, and we don't recommend power of attorneys because they're not really enforced all the time, and they only are good for 1 year in Kentucky. It's just like a shot in the dark whether that 1 year is going to be the useful year. But one big thing we do recommend, and I know that you guys might work with a lot of families in doing like enrollment paperwork with schools, is for them to write as many people as they can on those authorized like pickup lists. Because if ICE were to detain a parent, as long as an authorized pickup can go pick them up from school, there's no reason that their day needs to be disrupted. There's no reason that Child Protective Services needs to be called immediately. We can immediately file what's called a juvenile petition for them in Fayette County Court or wherever they're living. which will allow this family member or friend to get temporary custody of them within 72 hours so that they would have the legal paperwork that they need. But the biggest key is making sure that they have those authorized pickups on the school lists, because that is, I'm sure, like when you run into at the end of the day and a kid's not picked up and there's no one authorized to pick that kid up. And so that's one of the big things we're trying to encourage people to do is, even if there's only like 3 blanks on that form, if you've got 6 people and you don't know who it would be, ask for an extra form and write some other people on there so that as many people as can be authorized. And then one other thing that we're also trying to encourage people to do, and I mean, this is part of a consultation, is sometimes there are extra statuses that individuals can get or pursue for children so we have a lot of families that are seeking asylum, and so they'll file asylum for the whole family. But there's also something that a lot of youth qualify for, which is called special immigrant juvenile status. And this status is for children that have been abandoned, abused, or neglected by at least one parent. We have a lot of kids that is true for, whether that means it's like a deadbeat dad that's just never been involved and dad's never been around, or whether it's they're in the US and they're not actually even living with a parent, they're living with an aunt, uncle, family friend, whoever. A lot of times people will have only filed for asylum, or they will have only filed for the special immigrant juvenile status, and they won't have done both. In the past, there was a lot of justifications and reasoning why you won't have done both, because of financial and the chances of winning one versus the other. But because of how the situation is right now, we're really encouraging people to file for both if they're at all eligible. And so a lot of people, that's part of the why we're encouraging new screening and new consultations if they haven't, because if you would ask me 3 years ago, I probably would have told you that you didn't need to, but now because of how things have changed, that answer is different. And so encouraging families, even if they have something pending, to go back and either talk to the lawyer they have on that case or get a consult with a lawyer if they don't have a lawyer following their case, so that they can make sure they know anything that they might be eligible for and have filed as many applications as possible, because of the way that we're seeing applications being thrown out or mishandled right now, versus in the past that wasn't true. And so that's part of the impetus for encouraging families to get more consultations.
We have a question in the chat, and then Ashley Taylor has a question. Can I encourage families to call Neighbors to get a free legal consult? I think you said it was $50.
They're $50. Yeah. So our consultations cost $50 for the family.
Okay. Thank you.
And I want to put something in that it's $50 compared to private attorneys, which right now, the highest demanding private attorney in Lexington, which is someone that we trust, is booked out 3 months out, Katie? Something like
Probably
that.
like 6 months out. And we're about 2.5 months out. And so that's the other thing, is we encourage families to call now, because when I get the emergency calls, we just don't have, nor do any other attorneys have the capacity to answer, I needed a consult right now. And so that's basically, we're trying to encourage families that don't wait until you have an encounter with ICE, because it's kind of too late at that point. Not that you shouldn't call if you have an encounter with ICE and see what can happen, but you're going to be set up in a better position if you know your options. Even there's something called that's cancellation of removal. So this is for people that have been in the US for more than 10 years before they're put into deportation proceedings. And there's different rules of what they have to qualify, but it's this weird status where it doesn't exist unless they're trying to deport you. So a lot of people, you can't just have been in the US for 10 years and try to apply for this. But anyone that I ever see in a consultation, if they could qualify, if they get contacted by ICE, I try to notify them right then that this is something you need to be aware of, because when ICE is trying to get you to sign that voluntary deportation form and you've been told in the past you have no options, the fact that the U.S. government is trying to deport you actually might change that, and you might actually now have options. And so encouraging people to get those consults and schedule them further out, because we are about 2.5 months out, and one of the private attorneys that we work with here a lot in Lexington, he's about 6 months out. And so there's not enough immigration attorneys just in general in the state, and then let alone with the new influx we're having of all of these Minneapolis and Chicago detained individuals, that if people aren't in an emergency situation now, that's the right time to get the appointment.
Yeah. And so if you hear, I applied for asylum or I came here for asylum, your follow-up question should be, do you have an attorney? And if it's like, no, then it's like, okay, we need to get you into Neighbors, or we need to reach out to Neighbors for a private attorney list, referral list, because those are the key things. We get folks who all the time call us and they're like, well, my court date is tomorrow. Can you represent me? And it's like, no, we can't. You should have been here a year ago. You can't wait last minute. And that's what we're encountering. And as Katie mentioned, we're in a legal desert area for immigration. We don't have enough private attorneys, let alone nonprofits who are tackling some of the complex cases. Katie is one of the very few nonprofit attorneys in Lexington, actually the only one who can actually represent people in immigration court. So it's very, very important that we get folks to see Neighbors or a referral list to private attorneys that we trust.
And I saw in the chat, there's a question about what should we do if a student's parent is detained. If they're with another parent, there's nothing that needs to happen. Well, obviously, like the person that's detained is probably going to need to hire counsel or hire a lawyer if they haven't. But for the student, if they're with another parent, that's fine. If they're not, then if they are with a family member, friend, whoever is caretaking for them, then what they're probably going to want to do is get a temporary custody order of that child so that they can make all medical, school, those kinds of decision makings. And I tell people, I've gotten people calling me that are nervous because they're like, well, I don't want to adopt the child. Like, I'm friends with the mom. I want the mom to get him back. And that's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to get an adoption. It's just a temporary custody order that can be revoked at any time. So as soon as parents got released from detention, all they would have to do is go back to the judge to get that temporary custody order removed, saying it's no longer necessary. And so if that were to be the case, we would recommend you can either contact our office. We have a list of family attorneys that also are doing these, and actually in conjunction with a private attorney, I'm doing a training for family law attorneys in April, so that they're more aware and versed in like what to do. But at least in Fayette County, especially, I am in family court a lot because of our special immigrant juvenile cases. The first step is getting a family court order before you can do the immigration piece. And so usually I'm getting emails from the family attorneys here in Lexington whenever they run into a kiddo that is detained, has a detained parent. And so that's the biggest thing, is either getting into our office or a family attorney to get that temporary custody order if they need it, just so that they can make sure all of the kids' needs are met while they're waiting. Also, like having conversations, that lawyers should be able to have a conversation with them too about what is the actual desire of the parents and the desire of the child, depending on the child's age. So we run into a lot of situations where people just assume what might be best. And so if a parent is going to be deported back to their home country, are they wanting the child to go with them, or are they not wanting the child to go with them? How does the child feel about that, depending on age? I've dealt with two scenarios in the past couple of months where this happened and parents were detained. One of them was really clear. They wanted the kid to stay. The kid was old enough and we wanted them to stay. And they actually didn't have a family or friend, but we connected them, and they now have a guardian. And we did help them open a foster care case because it enables the child to get free college and all of these other benefits. And the child was 17 and decided that that was what they wanted to do. But then I have another situation where all the mom is trying to do is get the kids to come back. This is actually one where an attorney in Fayette County reached out to me because he's a family law lawyer and he knows me, and he was like, hey, this is the situation. And so in this case, he was actually pursuing a custody order. And I was like, I don't actually even think we need that. All we need to do is get this child to the border of Mexico with a passport. And so basically, I think the biggest thing is before the detention, if we know what they want, or once the detention happens, if we can communicate with the parents, which is actually relatively easy in most of our detention facilities. There's phone call lines so that we can call the parents. the child can call the parents, whoever, to make sure the child and the parent are on the same page of like, what is the end goal? Do you want the child to stay here if you are deported? Do you not? Do you want them to come with you? Helping them get passports and things like that. Or helping someone here in the US get a temporary custody order is usually like what happens next. But I think a lot of times people skip over that question of like, what do people actually want? Because that's so different depending on every situation, every family member, all of those factors that can go into it.
Ashley, you had a question?
Yes, I was going to ask because this is a whole lot of information. Do y'all have like a cheat sheet that we can use to kind of guide us to the questions for the parents?
We don't, because immigration is so complex. It's changing every
Yeah.
day. I mean, Katie can tell you that, like, she'll start her day with one thing and some notice comes up and it's like, well, this changed and now we got to change. So our rule of thumb is always ask, do you have an attorney? And some red flags to look for is when folks are saying, well, no, I filed by myself, or I worked with a notario, and a notario is a notary. In a lot of, especially Latin American countries, like in Mexico, where I'm from, a notario is very much like a licensed lawyer, basically, and they can do a lot. But in Mexico, it's like they learn the law, they can do all these things that a lawyer can do. But in the US, we know that a notary is not the same. And so we have a lot of folks in the immigrant communities, Latino, and even in the Congolese community that will put up shops, businesses as notarios and help individuals file immigration paperwork. And that should be a red flag, that no one should be working with a notario to file immigration paperwork, because that makes it more complicated for that family or that individual who's then trying to access legal help. So those should be the like some red flags, is asking, okay, if someone says I have asylum, your follow-up should be, do you have an attorney? And if they're like no, then that's where you can refer them out to us. A couple other things to keep in mind, especially as folks are going to get detained. It's not if it happens, it's when it happens that individuals start to get detained. Ensuring that they're not calling, the person who gets detained is not calling neighbors or is not calling their attorney. It should be a loved one to call us or call their attorney. And the reason why is, one, we're such a small team. We're a small team of 2. We're in 30 Kentucky counties. And Katie has a caseload of 250 retained clients at the moment, which is quite a bit. And so we don't have office support at the moment to be able to answer the phone. So what happens is that if someone calls from detention, it's going to go to a voicemail, and we are not going to be able to get back to that person. So it's always good for a loved one to be the ones to make that call to us or to a private attorney, because that's how we can facilitate communication. Katie, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because what happens is when they call from detention, they leave a voicemail. All you get is that someone is detained in this facility and is trying to leave you a voicemail, and then it like hangs up. Like, I don't even get a name. There's no callback number. And so I don't actually have a clue who this is or how to help them. And so that's why it is so important that they know that if you were to be detained, you need to be contacting your family, your friend, have someone that you can contact that can then contact us. Because otherwise we don't have a way of like connecting who this person is. I see in the chat too, there was a question about like serving a single mother or people with financial strain. It's hard. So with our office, we do charge like lower fees, significantly lower fees than private families. When you end up in the detention centers, though, if like you end up being detained, there's virtually no way for you to get out without money. That's unfortunately the reality. The same way that you have bond in criminal cases, there's the same kind of concept in immigration. So in a criminal case, like if you were arrested, the judge would decide, okay, say you were arrested for shoplifting, the judge would decide like you can get out with a $500 bond until we make a decision on your case. So the same type of thing happens with immigration. Right now, it's actually really, really hard to get these bonds, and we're having to file habeas complaints in federal court to even be able to get a bond. But most bonds are somewhere between $5,000 to $10,000. We've even seen up to $20,000. And if the family doesn't have it, they cannot get out of detention. And so we've seen people like do GoFundMe's. We've seen churches pay for it for people, other nonprofit organizations and things like that. We don't have the funding to pay those for people, but it is something for people to be aware of, because as much as we would love to be like, yes, this is not about money, unfortunately, we live in a system that is functioning on money. Also, for certain applications, there are fees. Even to file, not our fees, even there are also like immigration fees for the government. And so these are things that it's going to be important for families to be aware of. Like even for asylum, now you have to pay $100 every year per person to keep your case open. That doesn't sound like a huge amount of money, but like to some parents, that is not something they have. But if they cannot pay that fee, then they cannot keep their asylum case open. And so it is something that is sadly just something we have to make people aware of, because we don't have the funds to pay people's immigration fees for them. But every once in a while, we do get like grants or things like that. Like we recently got a grant last fall to help a certain number of people with asylum fees. And so it's worth reaching out to see if we do have a grant or something like that. But then also for people to realize that they can reach out to their support systems. We've gotten a lot of churches that have been willing to pay fees for an individual client. So they might not be willing to fund us just generally as an organization, but I've had 2 churches recently that just straight up paid the fees for a family that they were involved with. And so just even encouraging families, if they are connected with a church or something like of that nature, to ask if they're able to help pay their legal fees, including their immigration fees. Because I've gotten a couple churches recently that are not very liberal on immigration stuff and are not very vocal in any ways, but this is a family that they know. And they were willing to financially support them in that way. But unfortunately, I know that finances is a huge barrier, and they just increased all of the immigration fees for the government last year. And so it's only going to become more of a barrier.
Anisha, I think you had a question.
Anisha, how are you? I have a question of a couple of things. Number one, I know a year or 2 ago, maybe a year ago, an organization we were working with, we printed up some of the red cards to give to our students. Just wanting to know you all's thoughts on that. And then my second question was, Missouri, you have mentioned like doing some of the educational kind of outreach, like the Know Your Rights and things, and you mentioned doing them at churches and things like that. Do you have like a list of places that you already have these set up? Or if we want to set them up at like a community center, like what do we need to do to go about that so we can help inform our families, and then, you know, being at a high school for our like high school age kids?
Yeah, so if you want to set up a Know Your Rights session, just email me and we can get that up and going. It really is just whatever the community needs. So like if we have community partners, like thinking Woodhill Community Center is always emailing me like, hey, can we get this session up and going? And we get it up and going based on what works best for them. And I'll make sure it works for my calendar. We haven't done any at the schools. I believe we tried doing it one time and there was something about their council and our council, like it was something legality wise. So we have not been able to do any school-based Know Your Rights sessions. It's usually been outside in the community, at community centers or churches. We don't have a list of organizations, like of places that we already have set up, because it really is like month to month. Like last month I had like 3 Know Your Rights sessions. This month I had several, but they were all snowed out. And then next month it's like we have like one almost every week. So it really just varies. It's just reaching out ahead of time. I ask folks to just give me about 2 to 3 weeks of head notice so that we can make accommodations, especially on our end, since we're such a small team, we need to make sure that we have the capacity to be able to do that. So it's just reaching out, letting us know, and then we will walk you through the steps, because safety is a huge part of the work that we're doing. And making sure that, one, how we advertise it, because one of the things that we know is like families are not going to show up. They're scared. You all are probably seeing this even in your own programs. And so it really is about working with already set organizations like the Marafiki Center, if we're trying to target Congolese communities, Casa La Cultura, if we're trying to target like Latino communities, organizations, immigrant-led organizations that have already been doing this work for a very long time, to be able to plug into what they're already doing so that we can bring in a crowd. Because we do know that folks aren't showing up. And that's just, I was in Montgomery County at the beginning of this year in Mount Sterling, and we were supposed to have 30 people and only 5 showed up. 30 people had signed up, but everyone was like, no, we don't want to go, because the county just signed on to an agreement called 287G, which basically allows local law enforcement to work alongside ICE. And to an extent, depending on the different task force models, they would be basically carrying out immigration enforcement. And so people were scared, and we only had 5 individuals show up. And so whether we get 5, whether we get 2 people or 35 people, we want to make sure that we just take the necessary steps to be cautious and to just advertise, because I will also say that there are crazy people out there, and the messages that I get on our social media about like the work that we're doing, hateful emails towards me, hateful emails towards Katie, messages on social media about the work that we're doing. There are some trolls out there that are just looking to see what they can get themselves into and how to hurt us. And so we take safety real serious. And so if you are interested in a Know Your Rights session, just feel free to reach out to me and we can get that worked out.
Sorry, have you ever did any online, like kind of like what we're doing now, to do it in a presentation via Zoom or Meets?
We have, but I will say that Know Your Rights sessions are very interactive because there is role play, and so we do want folks to be able to engage. And so we have done them online, but my preference, I'm also an extrovert, so I just live off people's energy, is to do them in person, because there is a lot of heavy topics that we do discuss. And yeah, people just have a lot of questions, and it's a lot more interactive, and people feel comfortable. But yes, we've done them online as well.
I do know this was forever ago, but like I worked with, I don't remember what school specifically it was too, with like the back to school stuff. I know that's like a good time to try to do some of these Know Your Rights presentations for like newer families too, whether they have kindergartners for the first time or things like that. Even we've been trying to encourage, since in Minneapolis, about 100 refugees were detained, and that was people with legal refugee status. It's never really been a population that has engaged in these Know Your Rights presentations in the same way, because it's never really been a population that needed them. And we, at least until I think last year, we're the 4th largest city for refugee resettlement in the United States. So we have a lot of refugees here. And so even I was talking to a leader that was in my office helping with a family in their green cards the other day, and he's a leader in the Congolese community, and talking to him about like, okay, like your families probably do need to be a little bit more aware of this than they previously had been, now that we've seen them actually detain people with refugee status. And so just thoughts of like, there probably is larger populations in your guys' schools that could use these than who we previously thought needed them to.
Yeah, I will also say, Anisha, to your point about red cards, yes, red cards are great. I will definitely say that it has shifted from last year. Last year we were handing out red cards like it was confetti. This year, and what we saw at the end of last year, is people are more aware of red cards, and also please print them in red. I've seen so many like red cards printed in green paper, and I'm like, well, we know that it's working because of the name behind it, red cards. So please print them in red. Reach out to us if you need red cards. We'll gladly drop some off, send them to your school, whatever you need. But alongside the red cards is also, we encourage our hotline number. So we have hotline cards that are now available in Spanish, Haitian Creole, Mandarin, Chinese, Arabic, and there's one more, Swahili. And we're working on Kinyarwanda. So if you would like some hotline cards and red cards, we can definitely get those out to you, because to Katie's point, we're seeing communities that have never been targeted that are being targeted at the moment, and it's immigrants and refugees that are being targeted by this administration. And so we're really trying to educate everyone, whereas there's always been this sentiment that immigration is a Latino based issue, and it's like, no, we know that if you don't look a certain way, English is not your first language, you're more than likely going to be targeted by this administration. And so we're really trying to get that information out there to folks. So yes, please do hand out red cards, continue to do that, but also hand out hotline cards, and we would be more than happy to send hotline cards to your schools. Just shoot out and send us a request.
One more like resource thing too is our Facebook page. So you can just search Neighbors Immigration Clinic on Facebook. Missouri does a great job when there are like repeated ICE things that we're getting at the hotline, like doing a confirmation or a negation video of it on Facebook. So that is something too that you can let your families know that they can follow, so that when there are these rumors, like I know Missouri had to deal with recently where they were all these reports of ICE being in Georgetown when really it was Georgetown, South Carolina, not Kentucky. And so people are not sending their kids to school in Georgetown because they think ICE is there. And so Missouri and her team do like a really great job with like, if there is something that we're seeing constantly repeated on the hotline, to be able to blast out more publicly, that's a good spot that they can follow too for that.
Thank you both for your time and for the work you're doing. Is there any other questions? Truly appreciate both of you. Thank you. Have a great afternoon, guys. Hope dismissal goes well. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.